brothers and sisters. Thank you for coming, lah. So hope you can all see the slide. And we're looking at Joel, and I'll be looking into the book of Joel, which is 3 chapters. Okay, it's 3 chapters, but handling 5 sessions. And these are 5 sessions, as you can see. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's my plan. But if along the way I take more sessions or take less sessions, I think we can adjust. Now, when we look into the book of Joel, one thing that pops up, okay, one thing that pops up is what do you know of it? And people will say things like it is the book with the day of the Lord. Okay, the day of the Lord is something that happens that comes out quite prominently in Joel. And another thing which I think most people remember is where God says, "Is pour out my spirit." And in Peter chapter 2, not Peter chapter 2, Acts chapter 2, Peter says that the prophecy of Joel about how that your men will dream dreams, your young will visions, and so on. So that part about the spirit being poured out on the people, where is that from? That's from Joel. Another thing that is very famous is this plague of locusts. I think when I think of Joel, I think about the plague of locusts. So we will be looking at the plague of locusts today, lah. But that's just an overall idea, and we will see quite a bit of these things as we move along. So when we look into this Joel, we look at this plague of locusts. Now, what I hope to achieve today, if I don't achieve much in terms of the mind, is I hope you can feel the emotional heartbeat of this section. I want us all actually to feel the despair. Truly, I want us to feel sad. I think that to me, I think that if we can be affected emotionally by movies, by the soundtrack, by the action, by the tears of actors who are paid to act, and they're just pretending, you see. But we can feel happy or sad or grief or excited together with them, and we can do the same with music. I find that music, even orchestra type of music, it can be soaring and inspirational, or we can have the lament and the sad love songs, so we can feel. I strongly think that part of good Bible reading is also to feel what the prophet is saying, what God is saying, what Jesus is saying, so you can feel the what they are talking about, the emotional heartbeat. And this part, the plague of locusts, is really despair. And just to help us along, I ask that we imagine, okay, use our imagination to pretend that we are a farmer. And if you've been working on the ground, imagine you're a farmer. You've been working on the ground, you've been planting the seed, you've been taking care of the land, you've been taking care of the wild animals, the weeds, and all these things, caring for the crops and all that. I mean, just imagine, it's a lot of work that is needed to do farming. And then a plague of locusts come. Or if you cannot imagine yourself as a farmer, imagine that you are an Israelite. Please understand that Israel is an agricultural country. It is not a marine country where your main economy is fishing or trade. Okay, so there is trade, there is fishing, but it's not the main economy of Israel. It's kind of like Malaysia. I mean, our main source of income, GDP, is oil. And then if you think about when oil crashed, the whole economy of Malaysia suffers. So people, especially in Miri town, for example, we do feel the pinch. People are losing jobs. The economy, even before COVID, you're already feeling this tightening. In fact, if you think about it, before COVID, the worst thing that happened was the oil crash. The price went down. Now, all that things in perspective is very small already. So, and if you are like Mauritius or Maldives, where it's tourism, or Langkawi or wherever, so it's a tourism nation. When the COVID hits, then you have no tourists. So it hurts the economy. And now for this case, the plague of locusts, it's hitting an agricultural country, nation, where if you look at the book of Old Testament, you're always thinking, when they talk about what they do, you will see that they are talking about vineyards, grapes, barley, grain. They're talking about fig trees. Isn't it? They talk about all these things. And if they don't talk about this, what are they talking about? They're talking about ox, sheep, goats, rams. Notice not, the sacrifices on the temple is not fish and crabs and prawn. So they don't do barbecue seafood. A lot of times it is actually the cows, goats, ox, and so on. So you can see that the sacrifices is very much on the agriculture. So to help us really see the locusts as a threat, I'm going to show a video. Because when I saw this video last time, when I saw this clip, I was very struck by Joel's prophecy. So this is from BBC, Planet Earth. Some of us may have watched it. I think it's a good show. But let me just make sure that is all optimized. It's 3 minutes long, but I think it's worth it. Like if you can feel you are a farmer, you're an Israelite, and this thing happens. Okay.
There is no other species on the planet that responds as quickly and as dramatically to the good times as the desert locust. Eggs that have remained in the ground for 20 years begin to hatch. The young locusts are known as hoppers, for at this stage they're flightless. They find new feeding grounds by following the smell of sprouting grass. Normally, it takes 4 weeks for hoppers to become adults, but when the conditions are right, as now, their development switches to the fast track. As the vegetation in one place begins to run out, the winged adults release pheromones, scent messages, which tell others in the group that they must move on. And when groups merge, they form a swarm. An adult locust eats its entire body weight every day, and a whole swarm can consume literally hundreds of tons of vegetation. They have to keep on moving. The swarm travels with the wind. It's the most energy-saving way of flying. Following the flow of wind means that they're always heading toward areas of low pressure, places where wind meets rain and vegetation starts to grow. As they fly, swarms join up with other swarms to form gigantic plagues several billion strong and as much as 40 miles wide. They will consume every edible thing that lies in their path. This is one of planet Earth's greatest spectacles. It's rarely seen on this scale, and it won't last long. Once the food has gone, the steady roar of a billion beating locust wings will once again be replaced by nothing more than the sound of the desert wind.
sorry, Craig. Won't start from the beginning. I scared that take up too much time. But you get the idea, lah. I hope you get the idea that the locust actually it's a force. And if you imagine you're a farmer and you're trying to prevent, what can you do? There's really absolutely nothing you can do. I can also say that even today, with today's modern equipment, you have whatever helicopter, pesticide, all these things. And the locust came because that video that you saw just now is actually a modern video. I think happened, I don't know how many years ago. But people cannot do anything. All right. Even with all technology that we have, all the power, whatever it is that we have, when a plague of locusts come, we are as helpless as the Israelites in Joel's time. Which, if you think about it, is really shows the helplessness of the human race. Actually, I mean, we think we're smart and can solve lots of problems, and so on, but we still cannot solve the same problem that Joel faces, the plague of locusts. And now that you see that one, and you hopefully can feel the hopelessness, like you cannot do anything about it. They completely consume everything, your crops, everything that you work hard for, everything that your hopes for the future, your hopes for the future, all is just gone by the locusts. They eat everything. Everything was green. After they leave, everything is just brown. Everything is taken, even the bark of the tree and so on, they also consume. So they are really a plague. So that's why this is a very scary and disastrous. It is a catastrophe, famine. People die actually because there's no food. So if you have that background, then we can read. Because now you understand how the Israelites feel. I'll read from 1 to 12, and then we'll stop. I'll pause. Then I'll read until 13 to 20. Word of the Lord that came to Joel, the son of Peul. Hear this, you elders, give ear, all inhabitants of the land. Has such a thing happened in your days or in the days of your fathers? Tell your children of it, and let your children tell their children and their children to another generation. What the cutting locust left, the swarming locust has eaten. What the swarming locust left, the hopping locust has eaten. And the whole hopping locust left, the destroying locust has eaten. Awake, you drunkards, and weep and wail, all you drinkers of wine, because of the sweet wine, for it is cut off from your mouth. For a nation has come up against my land, powerful and beyond number. Its teeth are lion's teeth, and its fangs of a lioness. It has laid waste my vine and splintered my fig tree. It has stripped off their bark, thrown it down. Their branches are made white. Lament the virgin wearing sackcloth, for the bridegroom of her youth. The grain offering and the drink offering are cut off from the house of the Lord. The priests mourn, the ministers of the Lord. Their fields are destroyed, the ground mourns because the grain is destroyed, the wine dries up, the oil languishes. Be ashamed, O tiller the soil. Wail, O vine dressers, for the wheat and the barley, because the harvest of the field has perished. The vine dries up, the fig tree languishes. Pomegranate, palm, and apple, all the trees of the field are dried up, and glass dries up from the children of men. If we don't feel what they are reading, right, what they are hearing this side, we will not be able to sense the emotional depths. And I think that even now in COVID-19 times, I think it's easier for us to go in because we are not in a peak of the economy. We are actually in the I would say at the point of perhaps economic collapse, of a global crisis in the economy, everything that's related. So there's a lot of anxiety and fear in the world today, and we are in a better position to understand. And I think sometimes that's the reason why God sends us this crisis. So, what is the big idea behind this, verse 1 to 12? Let me throw it to you. After you read verse 1 to 12, what do you think Joel is trying to communicate over here? Anybody want to take it up? What do you think Joel is trying to pick up over here? Very devastated situation. Brian says yes. Anybody else want to add before I move on? It is very devastated. And okay, so let's me move on. Now, how should you feel? You see, here there is direction from the Bible on how you should feel. The Bible over here says that awake and weep. Yeah, it says over here, awake and weep and wail, O you drinkers of wine, verse 5. Verse 8, it says lament. Lament like a virgin. Evan says, be ashamed. Says here over here, glass dries. So you can see that God is instructing for a wailing, for a lamenting, for us to be sad. And this sometimes can go against what the world says. The world sometimes tells us that things uh, will get better, positive thinking now. So there's a lot of positive thinking that comes about. We can do something as long as we work together, keep our spirits up, and so on. Now, the Bible actually shows us that it is okay to be sad, and we should not suppress and repress. I think Shireen actually shared a survey, isn't it, for psychological emotional profile. I just thought about it. I didn't think of linking it today, but that's also interesting. Again, asking how does the COVID-19 actually make you feel? How does it make you respond emotionally? And notice that there's an interesting part over here. A lot of the prophecies, they always have this sort of interval where they'll say that why did this happen? Notice over here it has not mentioned, and it does not mention for Kau actually, why this thing happened. There is no anything about they have me, therefore I send. They have eaten my food, so therefore I'll eat theirs. They have sacrificed their children, so I will sacrifice theirs. So you don't see any sort of like a reason. Huh? I mean, I don't see any over here. So in verse 1 to 12, it is, Brian said, it is a start, an introduction to this complete disaster and our emotional response to it. Huh? I'm not sure whether you can feel the depth of it also. Again, I'm trying to bring out the depth and praying to God that it allows me, that I can help you see. The grain offering and the drink offering is cut off. Now, for many of us, we don't think that's a big deal, but today is a Bible study. So let us study Bible study. In Numbers 28, verse 1 to 8, it tells us why that Joel verse is very important. Because in Numbers 28, verse 1 to 8, it talks about the daily offering. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, command the people of Israel and say to them, my offering, my food for my food offerings, my pleasing aroma, you shall be careful to offer to me at its appointed time. And you shall say to them, this is the food offering that you shall offer to the 2 male lambs a year old without blemish, day by day, as a regular offering. So it's an offering given daily. The one lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight. Or 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a grain offering, mixed with 1/4 of a hin of beaten oil, olive oil. And then going to the next highlighted part, in the holy place you shall pour out a drink offering of strong drink to the Lord. And it continues on saying that the grain offering that's given in the morning, and the drink offering that's given in the morning, you shall also offer it at twilight. Okay, so you see, this for a people that have this tradition or this ritual of doing daily offering to the Lord, they cannot do it anymore. And the priests mourn because that is part of their duty, you see. Can you see the sadness? If I could wish, I wish you would cry. Because this is something they've been doing, and it's something that their fathers and their fathers' fathers have told them to do as the Lord has commanded. Even the rascals and the evildoers, they still know how to sacrifice. But Lord, God did not accept their sacrifices, but still know, you see. So when this thing happened, when the grain offering and the drink offering is cut off, they cannot fulfill their covenant promises, to follow God, right? To offer these offerings daily. They are unable to do it. Now, it's not saying that this Joel plague is the only locust, or plague of locusts is the only time. Times of war, times of disaster also cannot. But here is highlighted so much because the plague of locusts, where does it attack? It attacks the grain, it attacks the olive. So they just cannot offer. I don't know whether we can feel the sense. Think about something that you do every day. Think about something that you do every day that, I don't know, is it something you like or part of your routine? And basically it's our MBO, right? but think about it as something that I put to you. If it is your routine to read the Bible every day, And imagine, just imagine that when you read the Bible, you feel it's not a duty, but it's something that you look forward to. And then as you do this, now the Bible is taken away from you. You are thrown into a prison and you cannot read the Bible, which you enjoy that moment together, the intimate moment together with the Lord, morning or in the evening. And that's taken away from you. So the sadness of that thing, or a musician taken, his guitar taken away, or something, something of the like. So there's sorrow. The priests mourn. They cannot do what they are called to do. The fields are destroyed. The grain is destroyed. Wine dries up. The oil languishes. Now it says over here, let's see whether I highlighted it or not. Oh, not yet. Be over here, verse 1, be ashamed, O tillers of the soil, well, O vine dressers. These are the people who are supposed to give, but they cannot give. So again, talking of whole society, multiple class, all levels are mourning over here. And what is our response? Actually, what's the people's response over here? Now, again, some people may be a bit more gung-ho and they say, okay, let's come together. Let's talk how we're going to do this. Okay, let's strategize, whatever it is. What is the response? Now, fortunately, God has already given them what should be their response. God has said, this one, again, let me read. Verse 13, put on sackcloth and lament, O priest. Wail, O ministers of the altar. Go in, pass the night in sackcloth, O ministers of my God, because grain offering and drink offering are withheld from the house of your God. Consecrate a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land to the house of the Lord your God, and cry out to the Lord. Alas, for the day of the Lord is near, and as destruction from the Almighty it comes. Is not food cut off before our eyes, joy and gladness, house of our God? The seed shrivels under the clods. The storehouses are desolate. The granaries are torn down because the grain has dried up. How the beasts groan. The herds of cattle are perplexed because there is no pasture for them. Even the flocks of sheep suffer. To you, O Lord, I call, for fire has devoured pastures of the wilderness, and flame has burned all the trees of the field. Even the beasts of the field pant for you, because the water brooks are dried up, and fire has devoured the pastures of the wilderness. So you see over here that heaviness that the priests and the ministers have, they cannot do. Then God says what? Put on sackcloth. Lament. Go into the temple. Go in here where? Go into the temple. Pass the night in sackcloth. Sackcloth very itchy. It's normally used as a sign of mourning, sign of not of comfort. Sackcloth is opposite of comfort. And why? Because you cannot offer grain offering and drink offering. Now, verse 14 is interesting. It is consecrate a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land to the house of the Lord your God, and cry out to the Lord. You see, when disaster happens to Israel, it happened, I think, in Samuel. It also happened in Nehemiah. When one of the things that happens is to call an assembly. And together, as the people assemble, and Ezra or Samuel would then teach the people and lead the people, minister to the people, and direct them to God. And they would fast. You remember or not? They would fast. And they would fast, they would lament, they would repent, and the priest would help them to express. The priest is the one that stands between, represents the people towards God. So the priest would then come and speak on behalf of the people to God, and they would cry out. So that's the picture of a response. And this is not a man-made response. Notice over here that it is an instruction. It is God saying, consecrate a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders. Did they do it? Or did they say it as it's a symbolic understanding? It is something that God says, but he doesn't mean. It is something that It was done in our ancestors' time, but it's not something that seriously asks us to do today, because it was done in the time of, I don't know, Moses or Joshua or whatever it is. Did they do it? Do you think that God actually expected them to do it? They expected the priest to call a fast and to assemble the people to come and mourn and lament. Um, I think the instruction is clear. When disaster strikes a nation, God is calling the people to direct their attention not to their sorrow momentarily, yes, but ultimately to direct their attention to who? To God. You will see in verse 13 to 20, right? It has shifted away from the locust and it is saying, my God, the house of your God, the Lord God, cry out to the Lord, the day of the Lord, instruction from the Almighty, the house of our God. Now you scan through, to you, O Lord, I call. It is asking us that when disaster strikes, the Israelites are supposed to turn to God because God is their God. And for us Christians, I don't know. Do we have the same response? Do we? I think we do. All right. So just to be clear, I think in COVID, a lot of Christians, a lot of churches do go towards prayer and do call God towards prayer. All right. So I understand that. Let me carry on first. So if you call towards God, then the understanding of the day of the Lord is near. Now, I'm going to talk about the day of the Lord in a future part, okay, where it's actually elaborated a bit more. One thing we can see here is that the day of the Lord is not necessarily, I don't know where you guys are in this theology. The day of the Lord, is it something that brings to you celebrations and joy and so on, or does it bring to you disaster and crisis and death and all? I don't know how you think about the day of the Lord, but over here you can see that the day of the Lord in Isaiah tends to be a very thing that people look forward to. All right, the day of the Lord in Amos and in Joel is more towards destruction. And I would put, and I'll explain hopefully later on in a future session, that it is both true. That there is a time of joy for some and a time of complete and total despair for others. And that is the day of the Lord. Okay, so I think those who are called by the name of Jesus, those who are Christians, will look forward to the day of the Lord because it's a time of rest, a time of joy. But for those who are not called by his name, it is going to be destruction of eternal suffering. I think scripture is quite clear on that. But until that day comes, we wait. And let's talk about this fasting for a while. When I was one time speaking on fasting, okay, I was preaching on fasting, and then I made this comment that one of the reasons why people cut themselves, it's a phenomenon that happens with young ladies, youth now, teenagers and so on. They take a knife, they take a scissor, and they cut themselves. This occurs sometimes because of breakups, pressure from family, pressure from everywhere. And as I understand it, although I'm not a psychologist, the understanding behind this is that you cut yourself so that the pain in your heart is moved to the pain in your physical body, so that the pain in your heart is just too much, you see, that you don't know how to get of it. So therefore you cut your wrist, you cut your sides, you cut your stomach. I don't know lah, they cut and so on to get rid of that pain so that their mind goes somewhere else. And I think it's a very disturbing phenomenon. All right. And in that sermon, I said that if you really want to take that pain out, why don't you go and fast? Because by fasting, when you fast, you are having pain. But that pain is a directional towards God type of pain because Again, when you think about the pain in your stomach, it is not directed towards, how do I say, it is not self-centered thing. It is to God and saying to God that, God, I need you food. I need you more. My pain, my sorrow, my mourning is so deep, but what I really want is you, oh Lord. So that is the way God has blessed his people to mourn, to lament, to express that thing. And I say that if you think about cutting, it has more in relations with Baal. In the Bible, the one place where the priests cut themselves is actually the Baal before Elijah in the mountain of, what's the mountain's name already? Carmel. So that's where they cut. So fasting is actually God's blessing on the people. So I think that maybe that would help people to see fasting in a different way. All right. Now, there are so many things to talk about fasting. What I want to say here is, what will compel a church to fast and pray? And I'm not so much referring to this, how do I say, to our NECF 40 days fast and pray, to the other initiatives and so on, fast and pray on a yearly thing. I'm saying that this disaster that is in Joel, right, it has caused the nation to mourn as God has called, and the response is supposed to be fast. So if we are going to apply what we have learned in Joel Day, my question is, what type of disaster do we need before the church actually know that they're supposed to fast and pray before the Lord? Because I can think of many reasons why we should not. We should not because, it's not a must. The Bible doesn't say you must. We should not because, I don't know, health reasons, which is valid. I cannot do my work, which is also valid. So I can think of many, many reasons why I do not need to fast and pray. And I have used those reasons before. Okay, I'm not a very good at fasting and praying. I've confessed my flaw in this. But I'm not talking about individual one, here. This one is the consecrate a fast and call a solemn assembly. And my question to this passage just now was, did the people actually do it? When the priest called and blew the horn, I don't know how they passed the message, and blow the horn and said, now is a time of fast, call the assembly, bring the people, assemble them to the temple and ask them to fast and cry before the Lord. Cry out to the Lord. It says, see, to the house of the Lord your God and cry out to the Lord. Did they do it? Now, transition it over here. If the pastors of the church, if the leaders of the church were to now say, we're going to consecrate a fast and call a solemn assembly, will the people do it? And I would say that it depends. It depends on how bad the situation is. So that's why I ask this question. At what level of disaster will compel a church to fast and pray? Because I don't say this to curse, and I don't say I'm God, but I pose this question as a what if. Perhaps that is what God needs to do in order to force the church to pray and fast as a church. And the question then becomes, do we need to wait until that time? Only then will we as a church corporately fast and pray. I put to you different scenarios. Do we need so that people are actually happy in the church? Do we need such that people, half the families in the church actually are COVID positive? Do we need that we have actually a more terrible variant of COVID-19 to strike through the various nations? What do we actually need in order for the church to respond to the Lord as believers? when there is a crisis that occurs, a national crisis has occurred, then only we respond according to biblical methods. Now, those are very scary words. And I say this as one who doesn't fast and pray, but it is a thought. And I ask that as we read these uncomfortable passages, because over here, I think it's very, very clear. A disaster happens and God calls the people to fast and pray. Can you read anything else from here? Which is the question, who will compel a church to fast and pray? If God called Joel, and Joel has called the priests, and the priest has now called the people to fast and pray, and the people refuse, who are they disobeying? They're disobeying the priest, they're disobeying Joel, they're disobeying God. Now, when the leaders and the pastors of a church now don't encourage, I'm not saying encourage, I'm saying command. We use the word encourage a lot, which is a good word. But at what level then does the church then say, church, we are going to consecrate. We are going to fast. We are going to call upon God as a church. And we're going to do this, everybody. If you cannot, it's not because you don't want to, you want to. But you just cannot. Maybe physically, not possible. But the whole nation will fast. You know why it's important that everybody joins the fast? Put it this way to you. If you have a family and then the old style, if someone was to die, people have to wear sackcloth, correct? Okay, can follow me lah. Old timers, the Chinese also got this tradition. You have to wear sackcloth. Now, if all family members are to wear sackcloth and be part of the funeral service, what happens when somebody tells the son or the daughter, you don't need to wear sackcloth? What does it to you? How does that, what does it mean when people say that you don't need to wear sackcloth? When your father died, when your mother died, when your grandfather died, when your grandmother died? It means you're not part of the family. The person who is told that you don't have to wear sackcloth should feel very, very insulted, offended, angry, outraged. Because I am a member of this family and I will wear the sackcloth. But I think for many of us, the thinking is, okay, Lord, I wear my t-shirt. You guys can always sackcloth. I'm more comfortable in the t-shirt. While the rest of the family now mourning. God has called Israel to consecrate a fast. The perfect picture for us is that they all went in. Heads of families from all around Israel gathered before the temple of the Lord, and they ministered by the ministers and the priests who are wearing sackcloth. They all lament. I say this not because I was just to finish lah. I say this not because I think that there's a need for us to fast. It's not what I'm saying. I hope that you guys understand. It's not what I'm saying. I am posing questions. So I'm not saying the pastors of this church or any other church is supposed to call a fast in response to COVID-19. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is the church, when called to fast, able to? Do we have the ability to unite and come together when there is a call to it? When it's not an NECF, it's not this or that. When there is a time of need, can the church exercise its spiritual muscle and just come before the Lord? Or we don't know how to already? Because otherwise, it's like the story I tell you. When there's a mourning, the traditional, okay, I know that we are not traditional Chinese, whatever it is, but otherwise, you're going to have a funeral service where the young people don't know how to behave. I'll tell you a joke. when my grandfather died, maybe not a very good joke, but quite shameful actually. But when my grandfather, I went to go to Kapit. Okay, so my family is not Christian for those who don't know. And then I was born, I was a very young boy that time, primary school. I can't remember what age. So I was very, very bored. I didn't know how to behave. So everybody was very sad and doing their own things. Everybody was very busy. So I found my younger cousins and I said that, come, let's go play poker cards. So we went to a room and play cards. And we don't disturb the adults don't disturb us. My aunt came into the room, saw us, told us in very, very strong terms, your uncle died. How can you be playing cards now? And she took the cards away. Because don't know how to mourn. But we were young now. I think that is our excuse. We were young. But imagine if 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds were playing cards because they don't know how to mourn. I fear that we don't know how to mourn when God sends a plague of locusts on the land. So this series will teach us, I believe, how to lament. And in doing so, I believe by turning to God, God is pleased. Okay, so I don't want to be too negative. I believe that God is pleased when the church turns to Him and says that, God, my rock and my redeemer, I have no more hope. There is no hope other than you. Come, let us pray.